Now the stream is up, but we are not on camera. All right, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate Attorney Jamara Edward Shipp joining us for today's Beyond Headline segment. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin. Okay, so Jamara, we have been discussing one of the major stories that our reporter Chelsea Bonfire is out covering today, and this concerns banned books. And that's why we invited you in here, so we could dig a little bit deeper and go beyond the headlines. The gist of it here is that there is now a civil rights complaint against the Cobb County school system in Georgia, in addition to a Florida school district, Collier County Public School District, for creating essentially for banning books. And the allegation is that they've created a hostile environment for students through practices that include censoring books and learning materials which feature, tell the stories of, or are written by LGBTQIA plus people and people of color. And the allegation is that these bans have directly contributed to a hostile environment for said individuals by essentially making these students feel targeted, feel that they're unwelcome, feel unsafe at school by suggesting their identities, their experiences are inappropriate or unacceptable. So it's the National Women's Law Center that's actually filed these civil rights complaints. Jamar, what do you think of the allegations here?
I think that they have a strong allegation. Let's take it back to Title VII was enacted during the Civil Rights Act of '65, and it prohibited discrimination based on race. Now in 1972, we have Title IX, which prohibited discrimination based on sex. That's why you now have girls basketball, girls volleyball, you have equal sports. So what this organization has done is taking the confirmation that the U.S. Department of Education just had, in which they said that LGBTQIA plus students are a protected class. They're taking that confirmation and saying, hey, this is a protected class under Title IX. They are being discriminated against, and therefore we're going to file a lawsuit against you.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you think that they have a very strong argument here. You think that they could be successful.
I think that they have a strong legal argument based on the way that they are trying to get this heard by a judge. Number one, they are saying this is a protected class, just like race, gender, sex, whatever your identity may be. They are saying that because this protected class is now facing a hostile environment, they are not feeling safe in their schools, they are not feeling like they are in a environment that is conducive for learning. Hey, we have a problem, we're going to file a lawsuit, and you have to make sure that these books are not banned in order for these children to have another way to feel protected in schools.
What kind of pushback do you foresee happening? Do you think it would come not just from the school districts, but also maybe parents, other parents?
We've seen lately that there has been a pushback from many individuals who, in lack of better terms, would like to mute the voices of LGBTQIA and people of color. I am sure that those individuals will show up just like they showed up to these school board meetings and say, hey, these guys are not being discriminated against. These books are just too explicit, or they may change the values of my children, or whatever their argument may be. So that is to be expected. However, from a legal standpoint, I don't think that argument will stand.
Yeah. So what's the legal process here? Because I understand, so this complaint was filed, but what happens next?
The complaint is filed in federal court, and then it is assigned to a judge. You have your scheduling orders that are given, and different briefs have to be filed by a certain time. Different motions have to be filed by a certain time. The process for federal cases is much more streamlined than it is in such a state court or a court of record in like Atlanta or something like that. It is much more streamlined in that you have set dates, and federal judges do adhere to those dates very regularly. So it should be a streamlined process compared to if this was just a state case that was being filed.
Yeah. If, say, the outcome is not what they hope, then what happens?
They can always appeal to a higher circuit. Wherever that may be, they could appeal to the 11th Circuit. They could appeal to, I believe that case was in Cleveland, so it might be the 5th Circuit. Don't hold me to that. But they could appeal to a higher circuit, and it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court if the Supreme Court grants certiorari, which means that they will allow them to hear the case. But it is not an end-all, be-all, just this lawsuit being filed in this local district court.
Well, here's the other thing. So obviously it's one particular group who's filing this lawsuit. National Women's Law Center has filed this. But do you think that this is kind of a foreshadowing of similar lawsuits or similar complaints maybe that we could see elsewhere around Georgia and around the country? Because we know this is an issue that's not just here in Georgia, not just in Cobb County, but a controversial issue all around the nation.
I do see it being one of those lawsuits. This might be a watershed moment in which we see more lawsuits being filed in different jurisdictions. Now, the question is, how far will it be able to go? Will it be able to go all the way to the Supreme Court and they then decide to go against whatever the outcome may be, or will they affirm it? It just depends. We don't know what the Supreme Court may look like in a few years. I mean, we have justices on there who are in their 70s and may be nearing retirement. So we don't know, but we do expect to see more lawsuits like this in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And in that regard, maybe this is, potentially going to set legal precedent, right? I mean, if this is the first of its kind of litigation that we've seen regarding banned books, then, it would follow that whatever a judge rules in this case, however it comes down, that's kind of going to set the bar for how these cases should be treated everywhere else.
The funny thing about precedent is it involves all parties being in good faith and actually adhering to the precedent. What we have seen lately with the overturn of Roe versus Wade and other different cases, we are seeing that precedent doesn't mean as much as it has traditionally meant. So there is an argument that this may set precedent, but it's only as good as the people who decide to abide by it.
Well, that's a fair point as well. Any final thoughts on this issue of banned books?
I wish them all the best of luck. Hopefully we will see a change and we will see more people of color and LGBTQIA plus authors not having their books banned. Yeah,
another story that I've been wanting to ask you about, and I've actually just been looking for images that can support our discussion here. But, we covered the so-called Bonfire murders here in Georgia that happened now 8 years ago in Henry County, and 4 people were killed one October night, and again, what has been called the Bonfire murders. So there has already been a man who has confessed to the crime. He is currently serving, jail time for that, and his name is Jacob Koski. He's a white man, and the only person of color who has been kind of implicated or accused in this crime, his name is Matthew Baker, and he's currently on trial. And he was 19 years old when he was arrested for murder. So advocates have essentially said, look, the other gentleman, Josh Koski, confessed to the murders. There is absolutely no reason that Matthew Baker should be standing trial and potentially face the death penalty for this case, because that is what is on the table. I know you've been following this case closely. Do you have any thoughts on this?
My thoughts on this is it goes to show what many attorneys in this profession know, is that if you are a minority, you are presumed guilty until you prove your innocence. It is not a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And it can't be more evident when you have someone who takes responsibility for the crime, admits to the crime, that is now being, just pushed to the side and said, okay, well, yeah, they admitted to it, but we're still going to put this other guy on trial. it just goes to show that there are two systems of justice in America, and it just depends on where you fall in the spectrum, which level of justice or which version of justice you will receive.
Given that there has already been, a person, Jacob Koski, I should say, who confessed to the murders and is currently doing time for it, do you think that it's even likely that Matthew Baker would be convicted here?
Due to Georgia having what is called the felony murder statute and the party to a crime statute, I see that it could possibly happen. He could be convicted. What I am most afraid of is that the court will not take judicial notice of this confession and say, okay, listen, we cannot convict them, or this young man cannot be convicted based on this admission by this other party who has taken responsibility for it, who has pled guilty, who is actually in jail for these crimes. That's what I'm afraid to see happen, and thus lead to the conviction of this young man.
Yeah, I understand. Well, it's something that, we're following closely. Our Yasmina Alston is working on a story about this trial now underway. So keep it right here on Atlanta News First, Atlanta News First Plus for all the latest developments. Jamara Edward Shipp, we really appreciate you joining us for your analysis. Please tell us what areas of law do you focus in, and how can people reach you? What kind of cases do you want to take?
And so I'm a litigator. I do criminal litigation, civil litigation. That means I go to court and fight for my clients. Reach out to me on Facebook, Jamara Edward Shipp, or you can go to my website, www.shipp.com. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewers, if you haven't done so yet, please download our free Atlanta News First mobile news app to get updates on all the top stories and weather as well, sent right to your phone. It's free. Thanks for joining us.